This can be a tricky area. How we speak about people and how we remember them and how people die lives on afterwards, and that's why the remembering stuff is really important. Surveys say 68% of people reported that they're comfortable talking about death and dying, but actually only 30% have ever expressed their wishes around this. So it's something people want to talk about but don't always get the chance.
Well, a good death for me would be to have my family there, know that my wishes are being carried out, treated with dignity, without pain.
The best death would be if you just died in your sleep, peaceful.
I was a nurse. I know what it's going to be like. To be heard, and for the people who are looking after me, which I'm hoping is going to be my husband, that they'd still listen to me.
For me, it's how you're dealing with people in those last weeks and months. Is saying to yourself, how would I like to be treated? Or how would I want my mum to be treated? In my own position, provided I don't top myself, I'm allowed into the comforts of the university system for being used. I can say to myself every day now, you know it's not going to get any better, but at the same time I'm thinking out and looking out a lot, and I've always been, even from a kid, concerned with suffering.
Death is death. I don't think anybody can prepare you for, all I want is my mum not to be in pain, and more importantly for my mum to die with dignity.
Jim doesn't want to talk about death. He says, "Don't put me in a bin bag." In my head, I've got all the arrangements made. He knows I'm organised.
Why is end-of-life care important for you to be talking about today?
Because it's got to come to us all one day.
I didn't discuss with Mum, when I could have done, her actual plans for her funeral and her wishes. And it's too late now to discuss that with her. And I wish when she'd been more lucid, we'd have done that.
I want to know what's going to go on, what's going to happen to me down the line. Now, you see, that's absolutely impossible, but I don't know what could be the route. I haven't had any access to it, to conversations. This is the first opportunity that's come to me to actually talk about what the reality of the subject is.
There are lots of possibilities, at least 5 or so that you've got in your mind. Is there an idea, you mentioned euthanasia earlier, and I know that's a tricky word that we don't mention. Is that in your mind? That
yes, it would
depending on the route that you were on?
Comfortable route would be route 5, where I would stay at home and just, I would lose my powers. They would bring people in to do the necessary activities. I'd pop out with pneumonia or something like that.
One thing that struck me was when somebody mentioned euthanasia. My role is to make somebody as comfortable as possible at the end of life. However, I do understand other people may see euthanasia as a way of dying in a dignified way. Are we too focused on what we think people want and not what they actually want?
I said to my daughter, I'd like to plan up my funeral and my wishes and go around care homes, and I have got my name down. She was quite upset actually, and she was saying, you're not going into a care home, Mum. I'll look after you. I didn't want to put that on her, and I may have to go into it may be too much.
We haven't had formal conversations. I asserted to my son, I will not go into a nursing home. My hope is that I should be able to stay at home.
And although I've got the DNR on there, that doesn't stop that happening. So now I've got notes on file to say that unless it's a break or that she needs some urgent attention, I don't want to go into hospital. I want to, and I'll take responsibility, leave her where she is.
Communication between the person who's thinking about end-of-life care and advanced care planning, the family, the professionals, A&E and your GP and
paramedics,
and even the police. It's people communicating on every level.
when someone living with dementia has to go into hospital, for each department to know that it's on their notes that this person has dementia of some sort, but not only to have that on their notes, but that's no good if the person who's reading those notes doesn't understand dementia.
I've learned over the years of my mum's needs, and these are professional people and they've took time out. They didn't know what we were speaking about. I want to be with my mum. My mum will die at home. It should be one point of contact. They were forever on the phone chasing district nurses, and they should have been able to have enjoyed that time with their mum.
I have a short fuse when it comes to poor care. And I think if you have something that describes what that looks like, what's good for me might not be good enough from your perspective. Dignity, respect, they're general things that can be described, and then that leads to education really. And then what you can do with that, you can then commission that and then you provide it.
Professionals are scared to talk about end-of-life care. You need a lot of skills to talk about end-of-life care. If you think of all the effort and discussion we put into going to school, going on holidays, Christmases, but the one most important thing whereby we can only get one chance to do it right, we tend to pay no respect to.
What struck me was how open everybody was about talking about planning for the future and planning funerals, talking about death and dying. So today was very enlightening to hear that people are quite happy to talk openly.
It's a difficult subject to address, but then that makes me think, who is it difficult for? The people that are living with dementia are far more comfortable speaking about end of life than the people that are caring for them. If you treat somebody with respect and wrap it up in a bow and present it properly, you can speak about anything.
It's easy from a kind of commissioning and budget side to be a bit distanced, but we need to make sure that people with dementia and carers are kind of integral to all of our planning when it comes to commissioning services for people, making sure that we do appropriate consultation and we have the right involvement on some of these projects. And it is a challenge, but it's absolutely integral.
Lots of different things struck me. I think one big one was talking about respecting people. One of the things I tell our junior doctors is try to think what's it like being the person in front of you, because it's easy just to put you with a label or whatever, but actually the situation can be very frightening for people, and just putting yourself in their position I think is really important. To say professionals are too busy is not good enough. If you're a professional, if you said you're going to do that, you should do it. But that's part of respect, because if you say you're going to do that, then out of respect for that person, then you will do it. The initial thing I think is the individual is important.
We've made a lot of progress in relation to supporting people when they first get a diagnosis and supporting them to live well in that early stage. It's when people progress that are the difficult conversations, and I think generally what I see as well is sometimes we have difficulties as professionals talking about the progression of the illness per se, let alone end-of-life care. It's almost like you're trying to freeze people in that living well stage. So avoiding the difficult conversations can be counterproductive, and it's not person-centred.
Is there any take-home word, phrase or image you want to just sum up with?
The empathy, I think, and treat the person as a person and not a patient. It's important to plan for your end of life while you still can, and that takes the guilt and the worry from the family. Have this conversation and then carry on living your life.
Make a plan and also get your will in place. I mean, because your will's more than about financial things, it is about other kinds of planning as well.
We've never turned it around and discussed about me,
right,
which has brought that home to me today.
Wow.
And I know he will struggle without me because I look after him, but apart from that, he doesn't know what I would want, so that's actually turned it on its head today.
Right.
Often carers don't necessarily get the opportunity to think about it, nor indeed talk about it. And one particular carer said today that whilst ever the focus is on the person living with dementia, what struck her today is that no one was actually asking her about what her end-of-life care needs are and what decisions she needed to make for herself. And there was almost an assumption that the person living with dementia would die before the carer does, and clearly that's not always the case. By creating these environments, these opportunities for people to come together and talk openly about death and dying, it enables it to move from being a difficult conversation to an important one and a very valuable one for the people involved.
Anna works for an organisation called Life Story Network, and they support a carers network called Tide. I'm part of an organisation called Innovations in Dementia, and we support the national network of Dementia Voices known as DEEP. It's been really important to weave those two stories together, which is what we've been doing today, and give people that space to share those experiences. And we think there's a real gap in terms of what professionals understand about those stories and their willingness to initiate these conversations with other people with dementia and carers. So we hope what we've done is to increase their understanding and their willingness to be open with people and to initiate these conversations.
I've done this journey on my own, but then there'll never be any comeback. If you understand, because it's my mum's wishes, she had capacity. We planned everything. It gives me comfort. She was always a very organised lady. It's comforting for me that my mum will get what she wanted.
I am fairly comfortable with having dementia. I have found the whole exercise extremely illuminating.
Yeah.